Hello, and welcome to eCom Insights, the podcast where we give you data led tips to optimize your profits online. Hello, and welcome back to eCom Insights with me, Rail.
I'm me, Matt.
On today's episode, we're joined by Anand Madhani, Business Development Manager at Parcel Hub. How's it going, Anand?
Very well, thanks, guys. How are you guys doing?
Yeah, well, good. Thanks. Thanks for coming on.
Cool. So, today we're talking about all things logistics, shipping, delivery for brands on e-commerce marketplaces, best practices, cross-border, new innovations, what's keeping people awake at night, all these sorts of things. But first off, we really need to get to know you, Anand. So, you've been at Parcel Hub for 4 years, something like 15 years as part of the Whistle Group. So, yeah, take us through your journey.
Well, I didn't expect to really be here if as a young graduate from Queen Mary's University. Where did my career really get to this stage? And I think if I take it back to when I finished university, a lot of friends went and worked in the city, worked for finance companies, and didn't really know where I wanted to go. Worked with my father in his family business for a bit. And where the connection, I suppose, came into kind of the e-commerce and into logistics is I got a little part-time job as a counter operative at the post office, and it links back to that because you're serving pensioners, getting their little gyro for the week. You're getting the fish license and the gaming license, but then there's a man that comes along with a couple of sacks of parcels, and the thing was, you get to know this person, and he ended up being my first employer because he sold pre-loved games, DVDs, and all the things to do with kind of gaming. So essentially, he would get those items, list them on eBay, and from there, that's what he would do. I managed to blag a couple of hours with him and increase that number to which, being a young person itching for more and more opportunities came up with companies, and I've worked at the Whistle Group now for well over 10 years, and started off entry level customer service, worked within that element of dealing with complaints and public sector to where I grew again and became a contract manager for the company, essentially working under an account director. So I've been working with rather sizable companies, to which are household brands today. And again, where else can I progress to where I am now? Building new business for Parcel Hub.
It's great. I think, a little disclaimer about 25 years ago, I was working with P&O Trans-European Logistics, so I have some knowledge of where it's from, but that was a long, long time ago. And boy, the technology's changed over those years, hasn't it? So, over the 25, 15 years, logistics, people go, oh, that's just moving stuff to A to B, but it's so much more than that, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. Things have changed massively within logistics, whether it's for a letter, whether it's for a parcel, whether it's for freight. I suppose we, as consumers, we're a bit more demanding because we want our parcel yesterday or our letter yesterday. But also, you've also got to look at it from a perspective of there's add-ons there, there's extra features there, and I think that's really quite an exciting thing. More and more, we're seeing 10 years plus on at Whistle Group.
Yeah, and the data and this needed to let alone next day delivery. Amazon Prime now is in the London area is in the same working day, isn't it? So when that first happened, it sort of blew my mind, thinking, my God, that's such a hard thing to do. That'd be really useful to sort of go through that more and more really with it. So
absolutely. I think from my perspective, when we talk about what has changed, you know, I'm making myself sound really old now. I'm only 39, but what has changed in my time at Whistle is, things. I think one of the first things I encountered was things like 2D barcodes from Royal Mail. Royal Mail advising their customers, you can get a confirmation of a delivery. If you've ever sent anything down the post office of importance and you didn't want to send it special delivery, they gave you that little white slip, right? They said, "We'll stamp it," and they'll give you it. Well, that changed with a 2D barcode, and that came into play, and customers, had that element of, oh, I've had it delivered. Recently there's talks of drones. How a drone is going to be delivering your parcel. Milton Keynes has got Co-op using these little robots delivering your groceries.
I've seen that.
I almost ran over one of those in Milton.
Be careful, that's an expensive bit of kit. But even within parcels, if you think not as kind of transforming, but things like locker boxes. How amazing is that? The fact that you can drop your item to a locker box or have it delivered to a locker box because it's convenient to you, especially like you mentioned, if you live in London or a busy urban area, block of flats, for example, it can sometimes be problematic to have a parcel delivered. So having those different elements there and that tech piece there, I think that's really, really important. I think more and more I'm seeing kind of eco and CO2 elements being brought into logistics as well. People want to see how much CO2 emissions a parcel has potentially used. So I think that's come into it. And I'm a big advocate of it. Things like what 3 words, massive, in terms of exact location. And I suppose, again, a big thing which is really coming through is now paperless returns. Forget having to turn your HP printer on. Paperless return. It's on your phone. Scan a QR code.
Yes.
There you go. That's fantastic for me.
Yeah.
So, we've gone way out into the ether of like there's a load of technology out there, but I feel like we should bring it back into the conversation, ready to look at, to make sure we're all on the same page. Can you give the listeners a quick overview of the different fulfillment options the e-commerce brand could have?
Sure. So in terms of kind of fulfillment options, there's a number of different options out there, and I suppose it's very personal to you as a company and what your kind of business plan is. But in terms of, you can fulfill the products yourself, so that is you having the bricks and mortar, having the staff in place to fill those products. So it would be you having the products brought in, so that element of logistics there. You then unpacking those pallets, putting them into a location, and then having the staff, essentially, when the order comes in, off they go and pack them. Finally, having the logistics contract in place for someone to collect those products up. So
this sounds, sorry to interrupt, Anand. I mean, this sounds like you need to be of sufficient scale to make that work, right? I mean, this is something, I don't know if you have like a number in mind or sort of GMV or something like that in mind, but it sounds like you need to be sizable for that to make sense.
Yeah, yes and no, really. I mean, I come across customers that, are doing fulfillment of their own products from their own garage to sizable sheds.
Yeah.
But I think, if you're selling garden furniture and you've created that, it's not going to work out of your garage, right? But for a clothing brand or sticker company, stickers don't take up mass amounts of space. So I think you've got to have that in the back of your mind when you're building that business plan, to say, okay, we may start off here, but where are we going? And that's where the other options kind of potentially could come in place. So, you may want to outsource it to a third party. And when you're outsourcing it to a third party, you've got to look at the factors of where are they based? How many staff have they potentially got? Do they understand your product? Do they have the space for your product? What is potentially their way of getting those products out to customers? Do they have a number of contracts in place?
Are they compliant for their products as well, for alcohol or MHRA?
Absolutely.
Yeah,
It's massive. If you think, if you're a perfume brand, does a fulfillment have the relevant DG qualifications? There's so many different factors that come into place, and I think they're the things that you need to consider. Likewise, location of the fulfillment site. Do you want to be a little bit hands-on and kind of have meetings with the management team every month, or do you want it cheapest possible fulfillment option because they're based in the Highlands, because they're offering you a fraction of cost of a fulfillment site in London? So you've got to consider all these different elements there. I think the third option, which is really worth looking at, and I suppose it's more towards kind of low value goods that I've seen across the customers, is drop shipping. So you're not even having a control. So it could be the manufacturer. So you've purchased from the manufacturer a white label product. They're able to brand it as yourself, and they go, well, I'll tell you what, we'll do the shipping for you. All you're essentially doing is marketing the product and getting the product out there. But they have that control of fulfilling the order, the pick, pack, and that process there. Is there a right answer for any of those? I think it really does depend on your brand, your product, where you really want to scale up with things.
Yeah, and you mentioned that the cost element, which is, I would say to listeners, before you buy, really consider at least two or three logistics providers and go over all those elements we've just discussed, really, because there's one thing that's bitten me consistently on the backside is, in the past, seeing customers that have gone for the cheapest option for logistics, and it all falls out. Things go missing, returns go up, breakages, and it's so many headaches it can store up as well. So, any advice about getting the best value probably for your logistics?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you've said that. I think you've got to question, why is it the cheapest option? So if you're sending a high value item that is, £1,000 plus, why would you go with the cheapest logistical option? You've got to ask yourself that. From my perspective, you've got to look at the elements of from picking and packing to the box. Where is that being packed? How is it being packed? What level of detail is that going into? Then, in terms of number of hands touching the product, how do they pack the pallet? How is that transported to the main hub? What does that main hub do in terms of commuting that product around their network? These are a lot of things involved. If you've got a high value product there, how does that end delivery happen? We had a conversation with DPD recently, and they talked about high value products and having pin codes now. Well, that's fantastic. That's really great, So, and it came into play when I ordered a laptop. The laptop came, and the driver said to me, "Can you tell me your pin code?" And I was like, "Well, this is fantastic." They've not just asked for a signature. They've not left it there because it's been marked as a high value item. But then they've asked me for the PIN, and I think that's really important there. Going on to that is the customer service element. For me, that's a really important factor in there. How easy is it to communicate a problem? How easy is it to identify a problem on the portal that you're working from? In terms of how easy is it to get hold of an escalation point? How quickly can they resolve these things? So there's a lot of factors, and I think in my time, working within sales, I think I come across customers. They will always come say to me, "I want the cheapest option," and then I go, "Okay, I've presented you with option A, B, and C. I'm giving you a consultative approach. This is the cheapest option. This is an option to support you for all of your goods. But because we're a multi-carrier provider, maybe you can use a bit of this and a bit of that, and that gives you that flexibility there.
I think as well, it's worth maybe just going over what you mean by fulfillment, meaning what are the different steps involved, because you used a bunch of terms there around picking and packing and sorting and all these sort of things. So maybe just go through what a typical process looks like, if you don't mind.
Sure. So in terms of what fulfillment is, essentially you are fulfilling an order. So you're working towards picking a product off a shelf that has been placed on order through a marketplace, through your own website. It could be a sample. You have a member of staff or outsourced in a fulfillment center to put those products within the packaging, to then place them on your pallet to your logistics provider, and that they manage that process if it's outsourced. If it's self-fulfilled, it's something that's managed by yourselves and your team, and you're managing the factors from, like you said, the bricks and mortar, the cost of what the building, the wages of the staff, the shift patterns, how many potentially items you could potentially pack per hour, and then you're looking after that contract there as well with the logistics provider, and that's something in terms of fulfillment. So there's a number of different ways, like we mentioned. It's just got to be right for you and your business plan.
We've not mentioned one of the elephants in the room in the world of logistics, which is Amazon, which is arguably one of the world's largest logistics companies. I mean, how do you want to just talk through the different options there from Amazon's point of view? Bear in mind there are other providers out there for all of theirs.
Yeah, sure.
But how you could look to dovetail, because there's different fulfillment options as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think there's no set right or wrong in terms of, do we have an item fulfilled by Amazon? So that term FBA, if you're thinking of launching an e-commerce business, the word FBA or FBM, I'm sure there's other variations of it, but FBA, fulfilled by Amazon. So essentially you have a product and Amazon get that product in one of their locations scattered around the UK or across the world, and they do the picking, they do the packing, and they fulfill the product. What that gives them is the element of selling on their website to the end consumer. They've got that control. They have that control over you in terms of how quickly they fulfill that product, so how quickly they pick and pack it. And if you've ever seen an Amazon warehouse, I'm sure there's robots and loads of conveyor belts going all over the place, and they do it pretty quick. So they hold that control there, and they'll get that out to you, as we all know, most of us, I suppose, in terms of that FBA approach, you get it the next day or the same day in some cases, or most cases if you're in an urban area. So they hold that element, but you don't have a say in terms of a variation of couriers. It goes via Amazon Shipping or one of their partner couriers that they're using. The other alternative, I suppose, is merchant fulfilled options. And what we mean by this is you are a seller on Amazon, you're getting the orders through, and you are picking, packing, dispatching those products yourself. Now, linking back to what we said earlier, that could be within your own warehouse, that could be within a third-party warehouse, or that could be in a drop shipment. It could be within one of those elements there. But essentially, you are taking control. And what that gives you potentially is control over the couriers, control over your staff, control over the costings. I don't know what the costings are with Amazon in terms of to fulfill a product, but certainly when I speak to prospects, they use a variation of the two, because depending on the margin that's in that product, they've gone, this is actually better placed with Amazon because it's a fast moving product and we want to get this out as quick as possible. And people just tend to want it the next day. Whereas these products are a little bit slower and potentially we can have a bit more control of it. But more importantly,
that's true.
Sorry,
I was going to say, and you've got to bear in mind, because that obviously sounds like a perfect solution for a busy business. But you've got to think: is this FBA costs have been going up consistently most recently? One, two, if the product's really heavy, like a 20 kg bag of dry dog food or whatever, it's a big old thing. There's going to be cost prohibitive. You'll need two people to lift that into a van. Amazon is like, don't want anything to do with that. Or you've got a really particular unboxing experience. My brand head on is like, certain brands, certain quality brands, really want it to arrive, the package when it's meant to arrive in one piece, not being slung over the golden wall. And it opens up and it's beautiful and all that sort of thing. So if you want to control all that experience, we have a product that's hazardous or something, it's quite fragile, and I just want to trust my guys and girls to deliver it or back it. If you fall into that category, then the FB fulfilled by merchants probably the way to go, isn't it?
Yeah, 100%. I think it does give you a lot more control in terms of quality and the other factors that we mentioned. But that's not to say, you've got to also counteract that with the issues that do come with it. So if you're having to manage people, wages are going up, and if you're in an area where there is potentially a number of industrial kind of businesses there, staff could potentially leave for an extra 50 pence. Location, if you're based in the Highlands against, a location that's based in London, got to be realistic here in terms of your overall costs are going to be a hell of a lot higher. So this is what we mean by got to work that out. But then you're right, Matt, in terms of that quality. If you're sending out a bracelet that is, thousands of pounds, and they get it in really nice paper, it's packed nicely, they spray some perfume in there, so you open it up. Are you going to get that with an Amazon fulfilled by Amazon approach? I don't think you will. Whereas if you deal with that in-house, you have that ability of putting those quality checks in place.
So I know last year Amazon was running at least a trial or trials around actually offering custom packaging. I don't know the outcome of them. I don't really know of a customer using them, but perhaps listeners can get in touch with any of those results there, Matt. Don't know if you know of anything on that.
No. It's, to be fair, I always ask the question to prospects and to customers: where does your traffic sit? Where does it kind of go? Does it go down the all Amazon route and we only get a small element of it, or do you place it 50-50? And it's continuously changing. And in terms of your buying costs, recently the FBA costs have gone up, as mentioned. So some of my customers have pulled back and they've gone, right, and potentially if we gave you some more volume, do you reckon you could have a discussion about pricing? And we're like, well, absolutely, we can have a conversation about, if you're going to increase your spend with us, then there's a discussion to be had there. But I think having that control in-house also allows you to factor in other areas of revenue. So your own site, your TikToks, your Wayfairs, your B&Qs, your Tesco marketplaces, they're all new things. And once you've established yourselves on an Amazon and so forth, you might be looking at those, and it might be easier to actually fulfill that yourselves.
And one you didn't mention on the list, of course, is TikTok Shop. That's one of the newer kids on the block.
It is, yeah.
You ship by TikTok and ship by seller as well. How can brands streamline different marketplaces and their delivery systems? And for TikTok, sort of immediate next day delivery is really important, isn't it?
Yeah. So TikTok's the new kid on the block, and I think the prospects that I'm speaking to, some of them are very much, we sell on TikTok Shop. That's all we do. And I'm like, great. What do you sell? And the sort of stuff that they are selling is clothing, Korean noodles,
Right.
just random things where I go,
Yeah.
you're selling a lot of this, and it's almost a discovery platform there. And then the next day element is really important to that piece. But then I'm asking those questions. Okay, great. You're selling on TikTok, but where else are you selling? Where else are you selling? And recently, we're working with a company, two girls that have started up a clothing brand, and they said, we're selling hundreds of items a day on TikTok. And I'm like, I'm loving this. You're 18, 19. I was like, are you selling anywhere else? No, we're just selling on TikTok. We're doing TikTok live. We're doing it from our garage. Can you help us out? Because we're launching our Shopify site, but we also want to deal with international and other bits. And I'm like, love that. So they reached out to a partner that we're working with called Ship Theory, which is a software brand. Other brands, other softwares out there, Limworks, Dispatch Cloud, Pick Pack Direct. There's a number of them out there. But they reached out to Ship Theory and they said, look, we need an ability to bring in everything to one place, different streams into one place. So it was like, okay, we can help you. We can help you with that because the software allows you to plug in all your different revenue streams. So your potential Amazons, your eBays, your TikToks, your Shopifys, and then filter that through to Parcel Hub, where it generates the labels for them. And that's not necessarily with one carrier, but it's with a variety of different carriers supporting them on what they need. So I think for me, having the tech piece involved in that's massive. That's really important. And it's not expensive. It's really not expensive. I would put that in the same category as you selling, you purchasing your packaging. Because if you've got a good product that needs to be fulfilled, that's part of that process.
So we're talking here something like a live inventory system. Ultimately, that's multi-channel, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So it gives you that ability of all the different streams coming together, one funnel. So when you open up your laptop or your desktop, you just see the orders, and that's what you see. The consignment numbers will then be generated, and they would feed back within the inventory system back to the relevant trading platforms.
We talked about convenience with delivery, and what I'd be really interested in, I guess, from a conversion, a data point of view, is next day or free delivery. Which one would you choose, really?
So my kettle broke last week, and I jumped onto Amazon. Lo and behold, I ordered it at 8:30 in the morning. It was there the same day. So next day, I was like, wow, this has come the same day. But next day, I think is a very important factor to that. And we did some research with Consumer X, the Whistle Group, where nearly 60% have paid extra for next day delivery. So that's really important. Now, you've got to ask yourself, why have you done that? There could be a threshold to qualify for next day. So purchase £100 worth of goods and get free delivery, next day delivery, or you want that product yesterday, because you're buying it for a birthday, it's a gift or whatever. But I think in terms of that, I think consumers really do want things next day. And I think we definitely saw that over COVID, where there was a demand for it, and brands just really couldn't keep up with that, and that is continued to go forward on that.
There is one, I guess, counter example or trend possibly around like Temu and things like that, right? Where people actually are prepared to wait, I don't know, 10, 14 days because it's a good deal, it's a good price. And so I suspect it's probably pretty category specific around, I don't know, obviously sort of consumables or emergency type things, then clearly that's time is the most important variable there. But things like clothing or, I don't know, gadgets and stuff, even though people have been conditioned by Amazon Prime for, I don't know, 10, 15 years or something. I just wonder whether there's a bit of a shift in certain categories now where actually it's not the most important variable.
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think it depends on the consumer and what they need, and again the product. You're right. You're buying something off of Temu that I think the expectation is you got to wait 2 weeks. And as much as the sellers on there are saying fast delivery, next day dispatch and so on, the expectation is, it's going to be a long cycle. But when you are purchasing a product and you've taken the time to research into that, or it holds an emotional value in there, I think the expectation is I need to get it, pretty sharpish. The kettle wasn't an emotional buy; it was a necessary buy, and
a man needs his coffee in the morning.
and Mrs. Madhani was really happy that it turned up by 10 o'clock that night. So it just depends on that.
It's so funny. If I look at my own behaviors, I would never, like, if I needed something like as an emergency like that, I wouldn't go to Amazon. And it seems like I'm wrong on that, but it's not the first or second place I'd look.
There's so many factors though, isn't there? Like I mean, the kettle broke. I was like, I don't have time. I've got meetings going on that day. My wife's working at home as well. We need to get a kettle. When am I going to be able to go to a Tesco's, a John Lewis, or wherever? It's going to be the weekend. Do you know what? Quick search. Price looks good. No cheese.
Done.
But the thing is, like, with that delivery, next day delivery point, and convenience is such an important factor for consumers, isn't it? Definitely when you're looking at stuff like gifting coming up to Christmas. And I always use the analogy of, like, as guys, we love to leave it last minute, don't we? Let us face it. A couple of days before Valentine's Day, you don't really care about the price. It's just got to be there on your doorstep the next day. So with brands, joking aside, is like in the run up to Christmas, I had brands go, "Oh, we need to keep the price low because we need to keep on driving the volume." I'm like, no, now's the time to you're running out of stock, so you need to make some of that profit back because you've discounted the hell out of this over Black Friday, and so I've increased prices as much as like up to 15% the week before Christmas. And people are still buying at the same, or if not higher volumes, because time's running out. So you need to take the factors into account.
It's a really interesting factor, and I think if you are an e-commerce brand and you're looking at example of coming up to Christmas, you've got to emphasize logistics as a main point on your website. So those banners that you can see on there offering next day delivery up to 2 o'clock. So we're always, as a logistics company, we're always being pushed by our customers as well to say, can you potentially collect a little bit later? What time? What's the latest you can collect to? Because at the end of the day, you want to fulfill as many orders as possible that same day to get out the next day for a next day delivery. And that communicating that to your consumer is just as important as the next day delivery, I think.
Yeah, and going back to the our friends at Amazon, Seller Fulfilled Prime. So if you want to hit that as a fulfilled by merchant by yourself, you'll have to make sure you've got some guys and girls in the warehouse on a Saturday, because
Absolutely.
you've got to deliver the next day and get it in. So it's a lot to think about. I mean, and if that isn't hard enough, what about instant delivery, which is becoming more and more popular? We mentioned Prime now, but in China, hopefully I've got it right, it's Meituan for delivery, and Chinese version of TikTok are offering delivery within 15, that's 15 minutes, which is nuts. But lots more companies with, like the Deliveroo-esque type companies of this world are trialing with it. I believe I saw something with Ocado doing a version of it in London as well. I mean, just unpack how does that work? Have you you had much demand?
It's really interesting. So I think you've got the same day elements that hit the industry years ago, and now it's how can we get it quicker? How can we get it quicker? And this summer I went on holiday, and it was my first experience of Careem. And I went on to Careem in Dubai, and there was not just your groceries and your food services, but there was electronics on there. And because I got the 7-day free trial, it said, if the driver's not here within 15 minutes, we'll give you your money back. And I was like, hey, fantastic. But there was electronics on there. There was clothing on there. So I think there is a demand for it. The expectation is people will need to pay higher fees on, a subscription or on the product. But I forgot my phone charger. I needed a phone charger. I was like, where else? I don't know where else to kind of get one. This seems the easiest possible way. There we go. Purchase it. Lo and behold, within 20 minutes, the driver's there. And I'm like, this is so easy.
Yeah. I guess I'm a little bit skeptical on the unit economics of all of that. I think it's a great experiment, but I'm kind of skeptical in the medium to long term whether that lands up being profitable, right? On the unit economics point of view. I just think like it's probably limited to very, very specific types of products and
Absolutely
specific use cases. But love to be proved wrong on that.
You just think you've got to get to anywhere in the world in 15 minutes. That means you need some sort of within 15 minutes of everybody.
Yeah, and Chinese cities have got the density, I guess, as well, right? Like, there are very, very few cities where I think there's just like got that density to make the unit economics and the volume work. But good experiment to run. I'm happy to sit back and see what happens.
Let's be honest, guys. If you wanted a product within 15 minutes and you live in the middle of Wales or down in Devon, you're either walking to the shops or you're driving there. You're not going on to Amazon or onto Deliveroo or any of these things and purchasing that product.
And I'm trying to think what kind of products, trying to keep this relatively light, is what kind of products you need within 15 minutes as well, apart from a fire extinguisher.
Yeah, it's a valid point. It is a valid point. I think for me, when I used Careem, it was, okay, I'm here for a week. I haven't got a phone charger. Don't really want to go and drive to a shopping mall. I'm just going to do this. I know it's going to be more expensive, but I understand the factors that are involved in it. Consumers, if they need something there and then and now, in a populated, dense area, your major cities, it makes sense. And I think there's always going to be a demand for it, but expect to pay over the odds from the provider of the tech, but also from the consumer purchasing the product.
Yeah, and like our friends at Tesco doing the Whoosh trial as well, aren't they? They're saying 20 minutes. So we're always behind the curve, aren't we? Must try harder, Tesco. But yeah, I think one with Real, I think it's probably like the unit economics of these things. It's a bit like the Amazon Fresh stores as well. For Amazon, it's great for like pushing the technology as far as you can take it. But like I say, how many consumers need X within 20 minutes apart from food? If you're cooking a meal, can't really think of anything else really. So I think it's probably not going to be long-lived fad, I would have thought.
No, definitely not.
Switching gears a little bit here, if this is more to do with, I guess, international expansion and things like that. So when brands are looking to expand into at least continental Europe or the US, what are, I guess, some of the logistical challenges they're facing, and how would you approach advising a customer on that?
International, before Brexit, the B word.
So many, sorry, just as an aside, so many of our conversations.
We need a buzzer.
I know. A drinking game rather,
Yeah.
but
Brexit, like that.
no matter what the topic is on the podcast, there's always a pre and post Brexit segment. But yes,
Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah, it was people many moons ago. It seemed so simple, right? It seemed so simple. I think things are becoming. There's more information coming out, and there's more knowledge to make it easier to sell abroad. So if you decide to go down the fulfillment route and look at companies within that specific country, I suppose you've got to ask yourself, where do you fulfill that product from? But taking it one step back, as an e-commerce brand, if I was looking to expand worldwide, I'd be looking at certain factors like, where are your hits coming from your website? You're going to be seeing that from your provider there. Look at some of your competitors. There's bits of information out there where you can see where their hits are coming from to understand where there is a potential demand. Where are you getting inquiries from as well? You know, going back to the company I spoke about earlier, the TikTok brand, they said, we want to expand internationally. I was like, okay, you want to expand internationally, but where do you want to go first? We're getting loads of inquiries from Australia. We're getting loads of inquiries from the USA. Okay, great. That's really important there. So is your website geared up for different languages? I would certainly hit the English-speaking ones first if you're a UK brand, 100%. Easier to go across. Are you aware of the de minimis values within that country? If you are shipping within the UK to those countries, I think that's really important there. And how is that journey gonna happen? Is it gonna go on a track service, an untracked service? Is it gonna go on an express service? I suppose it depends on your basket value and what the customer is purchasing. You know, if a customer's purchasing an iPhone charger from the UK and you're sending it to the US, does it really need to go via an express carrier? Not really, because they're most likely going to have one that is within that country. But if your iPhone charger is gold crusted and it's unique to you as a company, you may want to look at a variety of different options. So I think there's a number of things to look at there. The fulfillment piece is really important. Do they replicate your values and what you do within the UK? And can that be done within that country? And understandably, most importantly, I think, if there is a problem, how are they returning it back to you? And I think that's something to consider there as well.
And you mentioned returns there, which is sort of like one of the other points I wanted to pick up. Really, is you saw that Zara, H&M, Boohoo, etc. all started charging for their returns because I guess it's a problem with fashion brands, people buying multiple products, and it's one analogy. You go into places like Dubai, people buy multiple products and they just keep the rest and just put the ones on that fit. But most countries, they just send them back, don't they? Which causes a logistics nightmare. So how are brands managing this? Because it seems to be very much in the way that there is shop online now as well.
Returns, I don't think is going to go away. Fast fashion, I think, are very much aware that people purchase multiple sizes, multiple products for them to keep one or two items and return the rest. which is why I understand, the likes of Zara are charging for those returns. But if you go into their store, they're not charging you for the return. So they're making it a little bit more complicated for the consumer, but they're taking into consideration it's a cost that is not going to go away. Returns last year, in terms of those kind of returns costings, again, we did some research. Last year it was £4.2 billion, which is incredible, which is absolutely incredible. For me, I think you've got to capture the data. Why is a customer returning a product? Yes, you've got it's too big, too small. Okay, well, what are you doing with that data? Then I'm returning it because it's damaged. Okay, well, if you've outsourced it to a fulfillment house, that gives you data to understand what is the operators doing within that site for it to be damaged. It could be that the original packaging from the drop shipment site is not sufficient enough. So having that is really important to allow you to build on what you do with it. I think one of the things that we're working on with our returns is giving options to the customer for paperless returns. You've got the option for home collections, drop at shop, but having a variety of different options. I think in this day and age, I'd like to think you're probably 1 or 2 miles away from a return stop, whether that's a locker, whether that's a parcel shop, whether that's a post office. You've got those options there available to you. But how do you, as an e-commerce brand, then encourage that person to come back even when they have returned the item? And one of the things we're working with our partners in returns is, rather than them giving a physical refund of monetary, you give them store credits. And I think that's a really positive thing. So if you think about it, if you purchase something for £10 and don't like it, I'm going to return it. Potentially, you're going to have to pay a returns fee on that. Okay, fine. But then if I was to say to you, rather than giving you £10 back, I'm giving you £12.50 to spend in store again, I think you'd really encourage doing that. Because if you like that brand, but it just wasn't the right size or just wasn't the right color or whatever it may be in terms of that purchase, having that there to make a purchase instantly again would be a massive factor to that. So for me, I think returns is going to be a really important factor still to play.
I love that idea, by the way. I'm all for surprising and delighting customers, really, especially when you've not had a great experience, have a little bonus as well, which I think is great. It builds loyalty, doesn't it? And things like subscriptions, which is another area that I'd like to cover, is like, how's that changed the game of fulfillment? Because obviously Amazon, have got the Prime element and others. How's that sort of helped with predicting volumes and
subscriptions? I think, for me, subscriptions is a really interesting area, because whether if we fulfill the product at the Whistle Group, or we're speaking to a prospect that deals with subscriptions, they've got a forecast potentially. If it's a brand that has been running for a number of years, they're able to say to me, okay, generally speaking, this is what we're shipping. Day to day, month to month, this is what it looks like, unless they decide to have a Black Friday sale and suddenly it goes crazy, or they've decided that they're going to really push out on the marketing spend leading up to Christmas, because that's what we do. So forecasting is really, really important when it comes to subscription. Having the ability of having that labor in place and pre-planning, I think that's really important. Don't overcomplicate your subscription. Components that are involved within that subscription to see if you can pre-pack those products. I think that's a really nice way of saving you time, because if you have a buffer of stock, then you're able to, when that order does come through, you're able to just get that label on, out the door it goes. And that time it takes in place really works. I think the really important thing, though, is that departments speak to each other when it comes to subscription. Because let's be honest, if you've got a massive promotion going on, or you've got a one-day sale, has the marketing team told the warehouse? Have they told the fulfillment side, because you've outsourced it to them? Are these people talking to each other? Because that's a really important element of there, because you don't want to let the customer down. So from my perspective, that's really important. Packaging, having the products next to each other within that actual fulfillment site is really important as well. You don't want to be walking, if you're not able to pre-box a product, don't have your operative walking from one end to the other. They should be close to each other, and that's really interesting. It's funny because I used to manage a company that used to sell subscription snacks, and they would run KPIs on how their operatives would run. I think it was like, they had to pack something like 300 snack boxes within an hour. But that was really important, of having the snacks there, all the different snacks, picking, off it goes, scan, out it goes. So yeah, that for me, there's a number of facts there that's worth looking into.
Yeah, this subscription thing is an interesting one, at least like from a nozzle point of view, which is where my experience is, meaning how much it actually helps out with the forecasting and the inventory and the supply chain ultimately. In our experience, it's probably lends itself more to 2 to 3 categories, right? So you're talking pet food, supplements, kind of, and maybe like, I don't know, toothpaste and things like that to a lesser degree, a little bit of health and beauty. But for those categories, we've been working on forecasting, cohort-based forecasting, and it's proved really, really useful, pretty accurate, both in terms of the inventory side and projecting out, let's say, I don't know, sales numbers and things like that. But I also know, and this is all via Amazon, right? So this is a subscribe and save program on Amazon. But I also know perhaps, I don't know, a decade ago, 10, 15 years ago, D2C subscriptions were a big thing as well, and trying it out for clothing, right? Apparel and clothing was a big one, where they would, you subscribe, they send you, I guess, a bundle of things. You choose things to keep, try them on, send the others back. And those have definitely fallen out of favor, right? And so I think it's just interesting around like the core categories where I have direct experience. I know it works very well, and people have built 50-60% of all the revenue is actually subscription revenue. So these are more akin to like actual subscription businesses than than not. And yeah, it's huge benefits of that. And then the predictability on the logistics side, all that sort of stuff is just massive.
Absolutely. And I think if you look at certain categories will trend in terms of subscriptions, and some will die out. I think I'm seeing beauty products, subscription products, if they built a solid branding, they're working. They seem to be kind of consistently there. But then let's think about something which is not maybe a high turnover, but quite a quirky idea, is things like toy returns. I've got a 2-year-old boy, and my wife was looking into kind of returns and how they a subscription model where he gets new toys every month, so it's continuous there. But when I go back to factors involved, logistics element, whether it's going out or it's being returned, these are 2 factors that play a massive part in your product.
I have to ask the obligatory AI question as well.
The buzzer for that. So
it's easy to, I guess, to talk a little bit maybe superficially how it's changing things, but are there any, like, I guess, concrete examples of how this is being used in logistics? I mean, I can think of a few examples, but I'd rather sort of hear it from you first before.
Yeah, I think it's a difficult one within the logistics space because it's got to be tried, tested, tried again. The one that really kind of comes out is I think AI is most likely going to be at the forefront in kind of route planning for deliveries, giving giving feedback to management in terms of what a driver is doing, where he's stopping continuously, so then that a different route potentially can come into play. So I think that's really important there, and with no doubt it's already in play with the likes of with Amazon and others using that. But in other elements of it, AI is I think it's really difficult to implement in parcel movement. I know in deliveries it will happen, where you'll see, an item being delivered by a drone, and that's based on the AI technology in place to say, actually, it's better to send this via a drone, or rather than sending this with a van, or based on this buyer's consumption, they prefer it to be delivered off a parcel shop. So I think there's still early days involved in AI. At Parcel Hub, it's very difficult to say we've used AI for kind of that technology piece yet. No doubt it's in the thoughts there.
Yeah, I think it's very much like a background thing at the moment, right? So, to your point, like the inventory management systems and so the routing planning stuff. I mean, and honestly, that stuff's actually been going on for a very long time. Like on the algorithmic side, even AI. People talk as if AI is a new thing, but it's been going on for 10, 15 years, particularly in those two categories, for sure.
Yeah, it's that grey area of what is machine learning, what's AI, isn't
Yes.
it? Amazon's done the. I had an analogy from their FBA system in the States, and it was around sun cream. And the system had worked out that because there's a high proportion of Hispanic population in places like Florida, the system had already worked out that you'd have lower UV protection sunscreen in that part of the states versus other parts of the states in the north that have the high. So, but yeah, so the system had already worked that out and moved the various components of the sunscreen around the states. So I think
there you go.
Yeah, I think that analyzing the data, I think, is probably the best way.
I think just to finalise on that point, for me, I think the key component in that is we want to make things more cost effective, and having that data there to continuously learn from it. I think that within logistics, that's why I'm confident it will come in a massive way. But it's who's going to shout about it the most, So yeah, the end goal is cost-effective operations, but maybe people don't really want to tell all their secrets just yet.
To that point, data is so important for logistics, making sure the stuff's in the right place when you need it at the right time. And it can be picked in its come time, and it goes out, and it ends up in the right place. There's a lot of data points there, but there's also a lot of GDPR data as well that needs to be protected. You can't just be leaking out people's postcodes and addresses across the web. So yeah, that's another thing. Is like, AI is great, but we've all tried to write blogs with it, and it can go rogue. So you want you want to be able to check the output before it's actually delivered to the customer. Is my point, I guess.
Yeah. Definitely.
Yeah. Well, that's great. Well, I think we're just coming up to sort of start to wrap up at the moment, but I think it would be really useful to give us a little bit more background about Parcel Hub and what you guys are about. Just thanks for having you on. Really,
no problem. Sure. So Parcel Hub is a multi-carrier solutions provider. We're part of a larger company called the Whistle Group. Per year, we support customers in movement of large letters, parcels up to 30 kilos, whether it's domestic or international. From our perspective, we are able to offer customers a multi-carrier solution, giving you the options to move your products, not just a singular solution, through one funnel. And for us, that's really important because it gives you options, it gives you the flexibility. Peak resilience is something that we go on about a lot, because if you have the ability of moving certain elements to different carriers, that's a massive opportunity to keep your business moving. But Parcel Hub also provides you with proactive tracking support. All of these things are combined into one collection, one account manager, and one portal. So you may have a variety of different carriers on board, but you're only coming to Parcel Hub.
Yep. So, if listeners, if this podcast has started to feel like a bit of a headache as a business owner, put these guys on your list. But yeah, I mean, it'd be useful just to look at within the world of logistics, what's piqued your curiosity recently from it?
I think for me, in terms of curiosity, I think there was a couple of articles I read recently about, making headway with drones. That's really interesting. Also, in terms of the fuel elements, so the hydro kind of elements, how trucks are going to move parcels along. I think Amazon are taking the forefront in that element, but movement of parcels, whether it's via an electric, whether it's via bicycle, drone, I think these are options that we're really looking into. But more importantly, going back to basics, dropping into a shop. If you can mask those parcels together and drop them off at a local shop, I think that's really interesting. I think that's something which is really going to increase in months, if not years to come.
And you, Matt?
Well, yeah, I mean, according to Cuban, a leading provider of eCom e-fulfillments in France, 96% of customers consider the quality and the delivery of their experience a crucial factor in their decisions. And in a 2020 study by McKinsey, shoppers enrolled in free loyalty programs spent 30% more than non-members. So this figure increased 60% of those who have paid membership. So very much about quality of delivery experience. Can I trust you as a brand? Building loyalty, really, I think is something that it's not just moving stuff to A to B. It's your customers' experience, really. It's so important. I think this would be my main insight.
So as ever, I've got something a little bit different, which is I think it was last week. Shopify actually appointed a CTO, which they'd been looking for since about, I believe, January last year, where the previous CTO left. And this is really interesting because Mikhail Parykin, he started off at Yandex, right? So like simplistically, it's kind of Russia's Google equivalent, but then has been spent a lot of time at Microsoft on the advertising side of things. And so it's kind of, I guess the two sort of main skill sets there would be on the machine learning and AI side, plus the advertising infrastructure. So it's just kind of thinking what Shopify is going to do on the product roadmap for the next few years there, right? Like the shop app hasn't really done anything. I never log into it, even though I don't know, I can't even remember. It's on the fourth or fifth sort of page on my phone or something like that. Is that going to happen on the advertising network side of things? Is that going to happen? How deeply are Shopify, thinking about sort of the AI machine learning side of things versus the app ecosystem to pick up the slack? So I just think it's a really interesting appointment. It's not immediately obvious what sort of the roadmap would be, but I think it's a really, really good hire. And yeah, I think pretty bullish on the Shopify side of things based on that.
Yeah, definitely a company to watch, and great insights there, guys. So yeah, we're coming to the end of another podcast. So just a quick reminder to go to ecominsights.co.uk. You can download an infographic that explains all the different fulfillment methods we've gone through. So don't worry if you didn't have a chance to make notes. And yeah, do share your thoughts on social media. Find us out on LinkedIn, guys, and do give us any feedback, or if there's any questions you have about the podcast, fire them on over on email, ecom.insights@optimizeon.co.uk. And yeah, just remember to leave a rating review wherever you are. Click that bell, ring that bell, and remember to subscribe. And yeah, keep being curious and keep thriving in the world of e-commerce.